Okay. First thing I have to do when making anything for anybody is to choose the type of leaves. In this case, it's a piece of old mahogany I've had for quite a while, and a friend of mine saw some boards that I did. That's one. This is made out of SIP, right? And that's a breadboard. And this is a meat cutting board. Okay. She saw that and she said, "Yo, what's up? Come to me, So I said, okay, let me go check, and I have a large enough piece of mahogany that will give her what she wants. So here we go. So after choosing the piece of wood that you want to use, what you need to do is to figure out, for example, if you look here, right, there's a crack. So using beyond this point for a cutting board would not make sense. So you try to go along the piece of wood and not encounter any cracks. And then basically where you see, so from here to here to here and then back up, that'll be the usable piece. Alright, so the first thing I need to do is to cut it, and then we start to process it. Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is to cut it on this bad boy. Alright, and this is a Shop Series table saw. These things are extremely dangerous, so you have to use as much caution as possible, because this blade here will rip your hand off with absolutely no compunction whatsoever. So you have to be really careful. The first thing I need to do is to adjust the blade down to the height of the piece of wood that has to be cut, because you try not to have more blade exposed than you need to. You're just putting yourself in danger. And always wear eye protection, because even though the blade is cutting this way, right, when it gets to this point, it's actually hitting up on the piece of wood. So pieces of wood can go in your eye, and you don't want to be blinded when you're using one of these things. Alright, just for FYI. Okay, now that we've gotten the piece of wood cut down to size, It's about, right now, it's 14 by 9.5. Right, so that's a usable size. It's a very substantial piece of wood. So now what you have to do is look at little things on it, like this edge here, and decide, and like this edge right here, and decide when you're putting it through the router to get its edges, what side you're going to use. So I typically use the sides that have the most amount of damage on the router, so that if anything, the router would kind of erase some of the faults of the wood. Although I like to keep a lot of character in it. So for those of you who may not know, this is a router. There's a router underneath here, and these are router bits. Alright, so with each shape, it gives you a different edge, depending on what edge you want. If you want a round edge, if you want a triangular edge, if you want a round edge with it, if you want to gouge, if you want to trim, that type of thing. Again, safety first. This is a very dangerous machine, and what happens is that you put the wood up against there, up against the rail, and the router bit shaves off what it needs to shave off. Now, part of the problem sometimes that we encounter, and if you look at the wood here, the router table is flat, but hear that? You get that rocking with the actual piece of wood itself, which means that either it wasn't cut straight or it warped after it was cut. So these are the things that we had to kind of look out for and compensate for when we're using tools like the router to get the shapes that we do. Okay, so now because the wood isn't exactly flat, right? It has a slight bend to it. When I put it through the router, you have like areas like this that don't take, and then you have areas like that that do take, and areas like that do take it properly. So I'm gonna have to do it by hand and round it out by hand, which is fine. I wet the wood before I routed it. I wet the wood, as you can see, a little bit to see what the grain was like on both sides. And the grain on this side was absolutely gorgeous. So I decided to go for this side as a cutting board side. The other side isn't as it's alright, but it's not as it really wasn't as spectacular as this. So that's why I decided to go on that side. I'm also going to cut a notch here and put a hole so that it can be hung up at some point. Right? Sometimes when you get pieces of wood, wood has its own characteristics, and you just have to work with it and do what's best for the piece. It's not necessarily what you planned, but eventually it kind of turns out sometimes to be the best thing. Yeah? Okay, so I've cut off now the edge where they had that defect, and I'm now going to put a hole right here so it can be hung up in the kitchen. So more or less she's ready for sanding, and let's reveal what the beauty behind the wood there. All right? Okay guys, fast forward to a lot of stuff that's been done. I've put in the hole, alright, to hang it up. I've sanded it down so So you can see the grain a lot better now, a whole lot better. And it's gonna even show up even more when I put some teak oil on it. If you look underneath, I've attached legs onto it. Yeah. So it sits like an inch and a half proud on the table. Okay. So the next step is to apply the teak oil and final product.